I'm going to be climbing a mountain in a few days. And I need to get over whatever the heck this is. So I've been pumping Zycam like crazy.
Well, as far as I know, we have 0% topic for today. So
Literally 0%.
yeah, what are you feeling today?
I think we've done a pretty good job of establishing ourselves in the brand space. Like that's been a good start.
Mm-hmm.
My mind has been stuck on a lot of small business,
Mm-hmm.
the whether it's solopreneur, my hub model, small business in general over the last week. Um, one of the things I find, this is kind of interesting to me in general, just because we have like this massive economic downturn on the way. I say on the way, we're like swimming in the middle of it right now. Nobody wants to admit it. Whatever. And there's this trend on social media as well. Algorithms change, trends change, sophistication levels change. And
Mm-hmm.
for the last 2 years or so, it was so easy for people to jump on there and sell and market and push a product type and a message that just caught on like wildfire. People bought and it worked and they made money. And suddenly they're rolling in this like, this is profitable. I can make money. This is great. And they scale or whatever, into new products. And then the tide goes out
Mm-hmm.
and they never built a business, and I'm not, as you know, I love to criticize the real business bros whose favorite line is, you don't have a real business, like they just run around screaming that until their own business tanks, and then they go take a job, which is what has happened 90% of the time in my experience with those guys. Sorry guys, but seriously, maybe just focus on your own business for a while. So I'm not one of those, but I am very much in tune with, you cannot approach a long-term entrepreneurial endeavor by just using little tricks and tactics that happen to work because the iron was hot for, a year or whatever. So many people are finding that right now, and they are panicking and freaking out because they're not getting the engagement they used to. They're not getting the reach that people have learned that, these products aren't as high quality as maybe they thought they were. And it makes me think about the broader business landscape and how economic downturns often expose that. And we all know that famous Warren Buffett line that when the tide goes out, you find out who's not wearing any shorts, or I think that's it. Um, I love that line,
I'm
and that's
disappointed that I didn't know that line.
really,
That's that's awesome.
it's perfect. And we have seen it.
We'll
We've been through,
look that up and put that quote on the screen just to make sure we've
yes.
got it right.
Um, so yeah, it's interesting to see. So I think there's this broader idea going on there. Since we're sitting here wondering what to talk about today, I think that there might be something to that, and the idea of longer term sustainable business practices, particularly where it comes to um, the acute problem that people face when these happen, which is, where did my customers go? How do I find them?
Yeah. Well, another thing that I've heard you talk about several times is the idea of, as a solopreneur or as a would-be solopreneur, sometimes people are like, oh, I'm concerned about putting all my eggs into my own basket. And, I've heard you say multiple times, like, it's kind of wild because as a solopreneur, you have as many eggs as you have clients or revenue streams, where as an employee, you have one. So when you're coming up against a shaky economy, it's kind of a tricky question of, like, if you were thinking about starting your own thing and pushing out in that moment, like, is it crazier to stay with the corporate gig that is the safety net of one, or is it crazier to go after your own thing, pursue your own new business with potentially multiple clients?
Yeah, despite the internet's craving for hot takes, the
Yeah.
nuance here.
Yeah. And given the economic climate at the moment, like, this is the kind of thing that makes you kind of shaky. So, like, do you pull the trigger or not? Which way do you go? Do you go back
Yeah,
into the boat where you think it's safe? Or do you go back into the open water where, who knows?
right. And we've been through a couple economic downturns in our career. We know what these things look like. I have a saying that I wholeheartedly believe and have experienced and have witnessed plenty of times, which is economic downturns are gold mines for solopreneurs. And just to be abundantly clear for anybody out there who's not clear on this, when I say solopreneur, what I mean is a business who employs only the owner. From that point forward, they can outsource to as many people as they want. It's a business model that just doesn't bring any of the leveraged labor in-house as full-time employees. Instead, it
Sure.
often looks outward for, subcontractors. or not. I don't really care, frankly. I've still completed probably 90% of the work I've ever built,
Yeah.
so it's up to the person in the market. But the point is, it is a model that the future is going to continue to reward as people abandon ship and bail off of these corporate boats and go into the
Right.
water on their own because they recognize risk and they understand that they are putting all of their eggs in that one basket when they have a boss versus being able to go, hey, I do have expertise, which for the record, if anybody is wondering if they are qualified to actually provide the value to the client, if your boss is currently paying you to do that so that your boss can turn around and sell it to
Hmm.
their client, you're qualified.
Right.
That's proof right there. But that's not sufficient. And this is part of where I love it. We're going down this path in this episode. This is great because we call it talent is not enough, right?
Hmm.
Just because you can actually provide that value doesn't mean you know how to sign clients, locate clients, interact with clients, keep them, get referrals, do marketing, budget and bill, and do all of the things necessary to run a sustainable business over time. But it is a matter of, but you can learn all of those things,
And not to
and it
mention know when to switch those hats. Cause guess what? Unless you outsource any of those things, all of those become your job. So you
that's right.
bought all the roles, not just your own when you
That's right.
went on your own.
Yeah, that's right, man. And this sucks being that we're both sick. So apologies everybody if I'm like coughing. Maybe we can edit those. Um,
Maybe we'll
you do
leave all
have
the throat clearings in just to keep it real.
like this, yeah. That'd be on brand for us, huh? No BS around here. Yeah, you do have to wear all those hats, right? And look, I don't care if you run a team of 20 internal experts. You're still as the CEO or the leader, you have to be aware of all of those things. You're still having meetings with your CFO and your COO, that's still a
Oh, sure.
thing. So it's really common for us in the super small business world, obviously the solopreneur world too. Like we have CPAs, like we have people who help us with the financial side. We might have people who open and close projects for us and handle billing. We can get lower level production people in very quickly to help us knock out the work.
Hmm.
You can scale to whatever size you want, and you and I have both done that. But the idea is, as we watch the economies tighten up, we don't have the overheads that the giant agencies have. We don't have the inflexibility that the larger agencies have. We don't have the thought patterns and experience patterns that those teams naturally develop over time, where they sort of fall into a niche category of expertise. And we come from the more marketing slash ad slash design agency world, where that's exactly what happens. You have your A, B, and C teams for budget needs of the
Hmm.
client, and then you have your sort of, I call it pigeonholed teams, where you put them on the account and hey, guess what? They become really, really good at understanding how to do designer marketing work for healthcare and pharmaceutical companies, right? But they
Yeah.
don't really
Right.
do all that much for B2C or something like that, somewhere else.
Or maybe
Well,
even specifically for one particular healthcare or
there
pharmaceutical
you go.
company, knowing how
Yeah.
to interact with one team, and they've really optimized the way they respond and hold meetings and do checklists and deliverables for how that one client wants it.
Yes. And we, on the other hand, get to handpick those teams every single time. And this is
Hmm.
something that I've been fixated on a little bit lately is it's a simple question and I'm going to ask it to you and turn it over to you with this, but it's what happens when the best people in every market don't want to take a job anymore? Now, what do you do if you want to build that employee based empire?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, so I closed or I uh, exited my agency uh, at the start of 2018, and I was starting to feel that with the talent then. Like it was just starting to be a whisper of, oh, so and so who I would like to bring in as a creative director, a couple years prior, or design lead, or writer, or associate creative director. All of these roles that I was talking to, I had where before it was really easy because I think we had a really great place to work that I'd make an offer and talk about, paint the vision, and then could bring in great people. Later on, it was tougher, especially to get somebody who had tasted the freedom of being out on their own, to get them to come back into an agency uh, world. And that was 2016, 17, 18. So I can only imagine how challenging it is today for creative shops in 2023, going into 24, trying to pry people away from, not just that thing that was happening then, but also after a COVID long period of work from home and further experience of what it's like to be able to get your work done without having to go into an office. Um, yeah, I think the the traditional agency model, if it wasn't broken before, is definitely going to be limping the next few years
Yeah, the COVID episode really pulled the veil off, didn't it?
for sure.
All of those agencies with all of those leaders who said forever, you have to be in here at your desk in order to solve problems and actually get your work done. And people from home get more done in less time and are just as collaborative. Look
Yeah.
at Zoom taking off, right?
Yeah. I know it's true for me. Like I was uh not just obsessed with the work I was doing and excited about it, but verging on workaholic, like working 7 to 7 most days. And I mean, it's laughable how much more I get done in a week these days. And I definitely am putting fewer hours in than I was back then. And it's because I don't have distractions. I don't have the team to chase around. I don't have all the meetings and I don't have a commute. So it's pretty incredible how different it is, even just from my perspective, going from an owner, leader, manager to a solo operator. Um, I'm getting way more done
Yeah. Every single person I've ever known when they work from home is like, I just can't believe how much more I get done. And, hey, look, what, last week, maybe the week before, when Lex Friedman had the whole metaverse thing, the little conversation with Zuck, right? Showing where that future is going. And the internet's minds are blown because now they finally get to see that, hey, wait, this isn't even actually video. This is something that is way more bandwidth friendly and could be deployed way faster. And we're literally looking into the future of, you're not going to be under this impression that you're in a separate space or room from people at a certain point. And we may be a few years away at tops from this. We've talked about augmented reality before, and I think that's the final layer. That's when it really kicks in. But the whole nature of collaboration and being able to work together is that's been one of the main things that the job and the agency offers, right? If I go down the list, I just think mathematically about this. If I go down the list of what the typical agencies or any employer really is offering for you,
hmm
it's like, oh, okay, well, a salary, there's that, which by the way, they dictate and tell you what you're worth and don't try to make more than that, it's wait your turn or whatever.
Right.
Um, but there's a salary. Okay, fine. That's stable. And then there's benefits on top of that. That's important. You should calculate that in. But really, when you just distill it down, those are just things that are, compensation, just like your salary
Yeah.
is.
Right.
So put it all under
Just
compensation.
a fun way to slice it up.
That's right. And then you have opportunity to be able to work with their clients, right? So a lot of times they've kind of been the gatekeepers of high quality work. And so you say, I want access to that high quality work. So I want to go get a good job at a good agency so that I can do good work for good teams, for good other companies. And then you look at the team itself at the company, like other people to collaborate with.
hmm
And you can keep going down that list. And those are
Or like
several of
people
the
to
major.
learn from, or people to
Mhm.
study under, or people to, you get to lead a team. So there are all of those other people elements too.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And then you get to the extreme of that, which is what we saw over the last several years at places like Google, who they're so hyper competitive to get the right people under their roof that they're offering massages, laundry, all of your food paid for. I mean, these kids, they literally don't have to leave home.
Right.
They leave home and they go to Google Home and they're taken care
hmm
of. They may as well furnish a bedroom for them there. And that got completely out of control. And now we're watching that, collapse as it obviously should, because the value's just not there.
hmm
And then I do the math on the other side where I'm going, okay, well, compensation, if you know how to get the right clients and you know how to do the right work, you always make way more. If you build it correctly, your ceiling is infinitely higher doing your own thing than if you're an employee for someone else. That I can't think of hardly any example where that's not true. It's especially true in our world. Then you go to quality of work and access to work, right? Well, you and I work with some major names where other agencies look at us and they're like, why is that one person doing out competing us? And they see the work we do and they're like,
Right.
and it's good too, well, because you're not the gatekeepers anymore. Sorry, guys, it's over, right? Except for like that upper 1% where you just have, millions and millions of dollars poured into budgets and you have all these things. That's fine. But
Hmm.
even there, it's starting to chip away a little.
Sure.
And then you've got the collaboration aspect and the team aspect. Well, I don't know about you, but if you ask most people how they feel about the coworkers, it's not always the most glowing report, and familiarity breeds contempt. So when you have the opportunity to
The
kind of
thing someone
even
is most likely to complain about at home.
precisely,
Would you
right?
believe what so and so said today?
Precisely. That is most of the baggage people bring home to their
Right.
partners, right? We can eliminate that. I mean, I'm not talking diminish it. We can literally eliminate it by saying, I only work with these people that I want to. And
Hmm.
even on top of that, when you work with people maybe who aren't ideal, they're way more tolerable when you don't have to sit next to them every day.
Right.
The dynamic has shifted dramatically. And I just look at it as it has nothing to do with my very intense propensity to want individuals to have access to the lifestyles that they want. And I want to empower people to be able to do that.
Sure.
It's also about the idea that I just think this is math. I just see where this is going, and minus legal shenanigans, which by the way, they are very eager to implement. We could talk about that, but maybe not on this episode. Other than stronghold elite shenanigans through legislation, this to me is the natural trend for every single industry where it's possible. There's some where it's not, of course. You can't weld steel remotely, but still, this is going to be a thing that I think we see in the market.
Yeah, for sure. And even it's wild looking at all the things that are happening with robots and automation and whatever else. Like maybe welding steel won't even be a human job in many cases in the future.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, in car companies and stuff, they already that is a point. They
Right.
they are welded by robots. You kind of brought me back to the fragility concept,
Hmm.
in that your boss will tell you that you're part of the family right up until they cut you loose and say, "I'm so sorry, but you got to go." Right? I can't picture more fragility than that. And I'm not one
Hmm.
of those that kind of, looks down on 9 to 5s. There's a lot of people who do that. I'll look down on a lot of bosses and corporate structures, who will fire people to make their stock go up 0.1%.
Sure.
Um, but my allegiance is with the people. And if you have a great 9 to 5 job that affords you a lot of opportunity to grow and lead teams and build skill sets, then I'm all for it. But I also don't believe it's a smart idea to put all your eggs in one basket, whether you're a business or an employee. And we're in a world now where it's just way too easy to build those skill sets on the side and find those clients directly or even just freelance.
Right.
There's a lot of opportunity. Um, I'm trying to think of a way to spin that into a topic for you, but you kind of came out of not just top of the heap, as kind of the owner, co-owner, whatever of the agency, but you went right back into the world where, your hands are dirty every day with your clients. You're a little closer to that transition than I am. For me, that happened in '06.
Yeah. So I'm what, 2.5 years at this point back out solo and going from a team of 20 some to in house with a team of whatever that was, 15, maybe five or six immediately on my team, and then back to solo again. Um, at the end of my agency run, I was largely the sales guy. I was, um, I was even both by my own recommendation and my team's recommendation. They were like, "Hey, after you sell it, you're out of the project," because it mattered to me what was happening on the creative side, and I would, unintentionally bottleneck things because I'd want to know what was going on, but I was too busy to have time to know what was going on. So really, I went from pure sales guy to pure marketing leader when I was in house, which meant I got to get my hands dirty on a few things, but it was more important for me to know about all the things than to be doing any of the things hands on so much. And then back to solo, I'm back to wearing all the hats again. So it's business development, it's closing deals, it's strategy and kickoff meetings, it's guiding clients through big problems. And then when there was visual execution, it's doing the design work, it's setting up the camera, setting up the lighting, doing the photography, doing the video. editing the images and delivering. So it's like all of the pieces of all of those things. And like you and I were talking before we hit record, I'm not sure if we'll keep this part or not. Like I needed another body here today just to help like set up the camera and make sure that I had it straight. And so it's not like the solopreneur thing is all glamour and all ease and all perfect. Like there are a lot of challenges to being by yourself. And so you learn how to kind of hustle differently or put up with the pain differently or push past challenges differently. And yeah, I mean, I wouldn't trade it for anything at this point, but it sure would have been great to conjure up a little helper here for like 20 minutes today just to get the lighting right.
Maybe when the Tesla robot comes out, that'll be the gateway. Um,
I get to shoot one of those Boston Dynamics
oh yeah,
robot dog things a couple of weeks ago. Just totally random. I was at a trade show and they had one there that they were demoing, and I just happened to have my camera with me, so I was like, "Ooh, I'm going to get some footage of this thing because they're so cool and creepy and like I feel optimistic and creeped out by the thing all at the same time." So yeah, it was pretty cool though.
it's gonna get weird. The future's going to get weird. What do you, when you think about the way that you said you kind of got into more of a lead generation sales, marketing leadership kind of role at your agency before, and now you're wearing that hat for yourself in addition to
Yeah,
all the other hats. That is often most people's primary concern is they whether or not it's true, most of the time it is true. They already believe they're really good at what they do, like the craft,
yeah,
right? And then it's like, but I just need customers to do this for, to serve, to use the
yeah.
craft. That's kind of their next problem that they hit, right? The secondary problem is now who's going to pay me to do this? What kind of things do you find to be different in the way that you handle how you get work now as a solo operator versus what you would do to generate leads and get the work before leading a team of 25 people?
Yeah, I think one of the main differences is because I didn't just leave a role where I was doing the work and then I went out on my own to do the work and then I had to sell all of a sudden. In my case, I evolved over, 15, 16 years from someone who did all the things to someone who only sold. So the selling and the lead generating is not like a particularly stressful thing for me at this point. And it's um much like people who do the work and they feel good about the work they do, they're not worried about that. Like that's how I felt about the sales and the lead development side was like I know how to help somebody buy if it's a good fit, and I'm not worried about trying to make somebody buy a thing or trying to scare up leads because I know what I can offer, what's most valuable, and how to connect those dots. And the one thing that maybe most people won't tell you is there is so much opportunity in the marketplace. There are so many people that need so many things. And if you can get specific about what it is that you can do, or even specific about a few things that you can do to help, there's not going to be any shortage of work. Like doing that value equation and finding the right people. I mean, once you've gotten past that, I think it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, saturation is a myth, man. I
Right.
remember you telling me years ago, and I don't remember what prompted you to tell me this. I think maybe I was considering um, expanding into one of my kind of tangent markets at the time, and
Hmm.
you responded with, "They are so dramatically underserved," like that the market, and it's one of those markets that anybody could get into, and it's so true that you know, it's like any other relationship. There are
Yeah.
a whole lot of people that are in relationships.
Hmm.
Few of them, very few of them, are in happy relationships. And in the world of business, you can ditch an unhappy relationship when a better one comes along. It's very simple to do. And that's
Yeah.
the thing that I think people miss a lot of times is they think that there's this like taken sign, around
Hmm.
people, and they're like, well, I can't talk to them. What do you think
Right.
about you again, 15 years, 16 years we talk about here. Your network is was just stacked deep. I mean,
Hmm.
that's always been a real strength of yours, is the ability to build relationships and connect with other people. And that's something I harp on all the time because, and you've seen this a million times, we've been in the marketing space. And I have this story about a couple of the clients that I had where their ad spend, well, not their ad spend, their marketing budget spend was allocated to a relatively fixed number. And I
Hmm.
asked them to break down, okay, how much are we spending on our efforts? And part of this I factored in time too, for the record, not just money. How much of this are we committing to finding new cold customers who don't know about us yet? And how much are we committing of this time slash money budget to our existing customers? And spoiler alert, they were spending at most 20%, and in the other case, about 8% of their time and money on current customers. And all of the rest went towards going out and finding strangers. And in each of these cases, I told them to invert that. We flipped that and completely remarketed our campaigns
Hmm.
towards the prioritization of current customers. And each of them saw significant revenue growth over the next 12 to 24 months. Significant. And that's the thing that I'm looking at going, um, there's such an addiction to this. Like, I kind of make fun of the cell phone companies who are notorious for running specials, right, for the
Hmm.
new user, and then basically giving the middle finger to all their existing customers.
Right.
Um,
Free
and that,
phone, 6 months free, $20 a
yeah,
month.
yeah, old new customers only,
New
and I mean, I get the
existing
math,
customers, $250 a month. Buy
right?
your
You're
own
right.
phone.
Here's a fee that don't recognize that you're never going to get out of because screw you, right?
Right.
Um, and it's just, you see it in banks, cell phone companies, you see it all over the place. And it's horrible because they become,
Hmm.
even if it's not conscious, a subconscious like template for how other people think that marketing and audience growth works. It's like, guys, that's the opposite. Like, no, this is exactly what we don't want to do. So for you, you were always really good at that at the agency level. And then taking that into your solo space, obviously you weren't going to be able to, you didn't want to bring on 40 clients at any one given time. That wasn't an issue. Like for you mentally,
Right.
how did you kind of look at the opportunity to go, hey, I'm going to handpick the kind of relationships that I have and build around them, and keep that balanced with the amount of time that you had to get all the work done.
Yeah, and the trick too is, I'm trying to do this a little bit opposite, maybe more similar to how you grew your business initially. When we've talked about this before lots of times, that in my previous agency, I started out with a lot of small clients, and not intentionally, but just at the size and the scale and the team that I had, you sort of have to shovel the coal to keep the engines all firing without having to let somebody go. And so we would end up taking on maybe more small clients than we should have, and should have had fewer larger clients. And today, that's my focus. Like, I'm really geared to have somewhere between 4 and 8 total client relationships happening at a time. And if it's on the high side, it's because a couple are winding down and a couple are starting up. It's not like all of them are a full bore for that whole time. So it's, probably 4 to 6 projects that are going at any given time. And
Yeah.
those dovetail a little bit too. So I'm really often in a given week, I'm only working on maybe 2 or 3 clients tops. That's a major, major difference from when you've got 60 clients on the client list and a team of 20 people. So they're all constantly circling around all 60 of those accounts. Um, so my focus has been bringing in those big projects that will last for 6 or 12 months or longer. Ongoing retainer kind of relationships are pretty ideal as well. And, finding work that you can sort of sell once effectively and have things to work on over and over and over. And I know that, um, again, I know I'm preaching to the choir here. Like, you've got clients that you've worked with for years and years and years. And just in my first 2.5 years of being back solo, a couple of my clients are ones that I've had from the very start, and several of them are ones that I picked up along the way that are still going. So, so far so good. Part of that is a habit. It's intentionally looking back at my lead list too. That I'm not pushing anybody. I'm not trying to get anybody to buy now, but I am following up when I said I'm going to follow up and making notes. And I'm going back every week and just thinking about, like, okay, who are the other kind of 3 month, 6 month, 12-month out clients, and how often do I want to kind of follow up with them to see if that's still going to be a thing.
Um, Music to my ears, as you know. I remember those
Right.
breakfasts where I was like, man, I need to grab another client or two. And you're like, I need to get rid of about 45 clients. Like, what do we do?
I wanted to
I,
play Moneyball. Like, I'll trade you 5 clients for a client to
I
be named
remember.
later and a draft
Yeah,
pick.
I remember. Yeah, you called it like a draft pick. And I was like, I don't want any of your recruits. Um, I think that's so wild to me that people forget how taxing it is to manage clients. That's what blows my
Hmm.
mind. And again, you get a lot of these guys on the internet and they're all, fixated on they're selling $59 ebooks or whatever. I'm like, look, we're not talking about that. We're talking about people who provide professional services, who budget and
Yeah.
scope out
Right. Right. Right.
projects to the tune of tens or, hundreds
Yeah.
of
If you're
thousands of
selling a
dollars.
$59 thing, go sell that thing as many
Yeah.
times as you can to as
Yes.
many people as possible. Like,
Yes.
your client list should never end.
Yes, exactly
All
right.
day, every
Exactly right.
day, add clients.
Yep,
But
exactly.
but that's not a client. That's a customer. That's someone who buys a thing and then you may never see them again.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. There's different markets. And then, again, I try to always be really careful of this. That business advice, it's always contextual. Like we have to be really careful with business advice. That's something that just does not happen on social media. It's constant blanket advice thrown out there as if it's gospel. And some of the early people, I fell into this when I first started my business. I almost lost my entire operation because of this. Yeah, I was building something I didn't want because I followed their advice to a T. You had front row seats. Nightmare material.
Yeah. Right.
And had to figure it out myself because there weren't a lot of other people, who built the model that I ultimately built at the time.
Hmm.
Regardless, when it comes to the customers, people forget about how much time it takes just to manage the customer that's non-billable. You don't get to make the money off the estimates, the meetings, the time, like until you sign a project that can soak all that up. And that
That's right.
takes time. Yeah. People forget about that. So when it sounds great to go scale, scale, bring on more clients, it's so risky to only have 3 or 4 people, on your client list or whatever. It's, they're forgetting that, well, okay, but now you're committing me to literally 45 hours of nonstop, non-billable communication every single week. What am I going to
Right.
do here? And that gets so many people in trouble. And then when I come along and I'm like, 80% of my billing comes from 3 clients. They freak and go, "Oh my God, that's so risky." And I'm like, "You have a job. What do you what do you mean?" Like to tie it back, I'm like 100%
Right.
of your income comes from one, person. What are you trying to lecture me for?
Right.
And I've always found that to be really silly because uh,
And by the
as
way,
it,
each of those 3 clients pays me what your one job pays you.
that's exactly what I was just going to say. I I think the big problem comes when people, again, it's financial acumen, it's business financial, like intelligence and experience.
Yeah.
They tell me it's risky. And I tell them, I have 2 years of liquid capital. If that one client leaves, my revenue drops by, let's say, 35, 40%. My
Hmm.
break even is still met to its, like I'm still well into
Right.
profit, right?
Uh-huh.
How long do you think it takes me to go out and fill that seat? Because it
Hmm.
doesn't take that long. I could go grab 2 clients and three clients to add it up to, or whatever, if I had to, like it's all, again, it's all contextual. It's not this like
Hmm.
one shot slam dunk gotcha. Ha ha. What happens if they leave? It's like, there's too many other variables here, people. Like, let's get smart about this. So, this is maybe a little PSA about protect your assets at all times. Like, pad your dollars, save up, have a cushion. If you have a 9 to 5
Hmm.
right now and want to start, your business or whatever, build the runway. That includes experience. It also includes capital. And you want to make sure you have those reserves. And business is no different. I knew that my biggest clients could leave at any time. I fired one of my biggest clients once for a while. You were involved in that too, by the way.
Yeah. Right.
And ultimately ended up working again with them. But
Hmm.
it that was scary. But I was fine because I had already built in that, hey, if I've got, it may take me 6 months. But then I bring it back to a point that you made. You mentioned that you kind of think about your contacts and your people in your sphere and the people you're connected with,
Hmm.
that you want to reach out with them and stay close to them and kind of keep yourself in their orbit long before you're thinking, hey, there might be a moment here to provide value to them, right?
Hmm.
That is a skill set that so few people do. And I just shot a video about this yesterday, that people don't even do this with their own clients. They'll bring on a client, they'll serve them to a T, and then that client doesn't have anything for a little while. And what do? They ghost them. They leave them completely in the
Yeah,
dark.
right.
They don't talk to them. And I'm thinking, that is the single most likely person to bring you money next. And you're just going to completely abandon them while you run off and go do something else. It is
Mhm.
not that hard to set a freaking calendar reminder to reach out to somebody once a week or
Right.
twice a week. Or by the way, become obsessive like I am about like logging all the important dates in their life and having those on
Right.
yearly reminders on your calendars and saying, hey, how's so and so? Or remembering that their kid goes to college and saying, hey, I saw the team won, a killer game over the weekend. That was really
Mhm.
cool. Did they go? Like there
Yeah.
are so many ways to stay in touch and stay close. And I fundamentally, whoever stays closest to the client wins. Tell me about your approach, because you're like a golden retriever as a human being, but you also have an introversion tendency that people may not know. And you
Right.
are kind of, I think you're like a poster child in my mind for someone who does such a great job at nurturing meaningful, authentic relationships.
Well, I'm not sure I can just shoot from the hip and tell you all the things that I do. It is just sort of habit for me. Like any clients that I regularly work with, if they go cold, if so some projects are or some clients are long ongoing engagements. And those clients you sort of naturally have reason to interact with them back and forth. Other clients may be very loyal to you, but they send you little bits and pieces kind of throughout the year. And I just tend to have a little bit of spidey sense, I think, of like, hey, it's been like a month and a half since I've heard from that client who tends to hit me up every 2 weeks or 2 days to ask for a little thing, and they haven't asked for anything. I should just say, hey, is everything cool? Is there anything I can do to help? Just thinking about you guys, or here's an idea, or let me throw this out, or even like I was just on the website and noticed we didn't talk about this, since Twitter changed to X. Do you want to update that icon? Are you still using Twitter? Are you still using X? Like, what do you want to do on the website? And thinking about those little questions, like you said, on top of the relational things. So it's not just the work stuff, but also can you follow up on a personal thing, or hey, last time we talked, your dad wasn't feeling well. What's going on? Hope everything's good. Those kind of follow-ups are really important. And then for prospects, I have those. I use a HubSpot sales, which is a free thing that allows me to have columns of kind of the state of all the leads, and I move things around and I keep dollars in there, and I just make sure that I'm checking on it. And every week I have a reminder to go in and look at it. And often there's only one or two things that I even need to do anything with, but it's just that constant ping. It's the automated reminder that I need to go in, pay attention to it, look at a thing, move it around, see how I need to follow up.
It's almost as if relationships matter, right?
It's
God forbid
funny.
relationships matter. We're
It
dealing with
almost feels
people.
like that.
Ah, interesting. It brings me back once again to this concept of patience and playing the longer game. Because again,
Hmm.
in my world over there on X with all these people running around that are just like, it's like every single day is like a panic attack for
Yeah.
them. Like if they're not blanketing, somebody with 47 sales messages or something, and all these people like completely cold. And I'm trying to tell them like, you do realize that you are like one decent relationship away from your life changing forever
Oh,
if
for
that
sure.
client is significant enough. Everybody is. And that
Hmm.
you can do the things that you need to do to cultivate and build those relationships, but you're not going to come out as you're a stranger. You're
Yeah.
not going to knock on somebody's door like you're selling them, cutlery or Tupperware or whatever. You know what I mean? And convince this, what kind of
Right.
business do you think this is? Like, this is not how this works. And yet you also have that principle of in sales, I think, what is it? They say average of 7 touch points or something for a
Yeah.
person before they finally sell or whatever. That the there is a reality to that still. The version of that is still very real. And that's just a simple, like they need to be familiar with you. They need to
Hmm.
understand more of who they are before they're comfortable, throwing $55,000 at you for a campaign. And that's the key to what you're talking about with the prospecting and connecting with those individuals, being on their radar and talking to them. And that's where I think people get, in my mind, so screwed up is they're constantly fixated on what can that person give to me in that moment.
Hmm.
That's what they see. They see the dollar signs that could fictitiously end up in their account if that person says yes. And it's not like that's not a thing, but your fixation should not be that. Your fixation should be, what is the value I can provide to that person? How can I give them something of value? How can I help them now, even before they're spending money with me, so that I can build rapport, build trust, and build credibility with them in a way that they know I'm valuable? And that's
Sure.
just simple, basic. Like, if you believe that what you do can actually truly make their life better, then not only should that feel okay, but it's almost like an obligation. That's the gift that you've been given to help other
Right.
people with. Use it, but you have to make sure that they understand the human side of that, because it's not just the transaction of the deliverable. It is the relationship. It's the style. It's the way that you
Mhm.
conduct yourself in your own business. It's what you say about them if they bring you on. There's all these elements that go into that, and the more you can make them comfortable with that, the better for you, or for them, but also for you.
Yeah.
That's the other key, is it gives you a little bit of runway too to figure out whether or not that person's a good fit. And we all know the dangers of taking on bad clients. Like, that is not a good idea for anybody. So it's a win-win for everyone. But you have to have a little bit of patience to build and cultivate relationships.
There's the other side of it too. There's everybody worries about what if I get a little behind? What if I don't have enough clients? What if I lose a client? But the flip side of that is, what do you do when you're flush? Because inherently these things kind of ebb and flow, right? So you were talking about having 2 years of backup, and you could say no to a client, you could fire a client because you felt comfortable and it wouldn't take you long to refill that seat. um I think thinking about, even in theory, what you would do when you've got more work than you need, or more dollars than you need, or you're caught up. Like, what might you use your time for? Is it just going to be fun? Is it going to be taking a break? Is it going to be building out marketing? Is it going to be, creating things and experimenting to create things to show in your portfolio? And that's kind of where I've been the last couple of weeks is, I'm working on a reel for video and film stuff, and I'm working on a script for a short film that I'm trying to get shot in the next couple of weeks before Halloween, because it's kind of a spooky script. Um, and it's super challenging, but it's been fun trying to get all the pieces together and thinking about, like, hey, I've got a minute to breathe here. And instead of just totally taking a time out, like, I want to fill myself back up with creative projects that get me in a position where I can show those things off, or share them, or just even get my current clients excited to see other things that I'm enjoying doing.
This is where that sort of like toxic hustle culture, real business bro, is freaking out, because you should be constantly slaving
Right.
away to scale and build the business and increase revenue, right?
Right. I mean,
You're,
I am following up on leads, and I am constantly, poking at people to say, hey, you said follow up in October. It's October. Where are we at? What do you want to do? Is this
get
dead?
here fast.
Do we want to skip it? Are we still thinking about it? So I'm still following up on those things, but I'm in a place where the client work is lighter. So I have a chance to do some other fun portfolio building things that I needed to do anyhow. So I just finally
Mhm.
had the window to get it done.
Yeah, it's really balance, right? This is the concept of balance. And it's hard, by the way. This is difficult. And there's this I don't know if it's a good example, but like, if you think about a home HVAC system, for example, like your most people have central air, right? And what that does is it sucks the air in to the system and makes it either cooler or warmer, and then it blows it back out through all the register vents, right? There's a
Mhm.
delicate balance to this. People, they should know. I grew up on construction sites. Expect this stuff. But the point is,
If
you
you
have
live
to
in the
get
Midwest, this is a weird time of year to
uh,
have that system.
yeah, by the way, yeah, your furnace in the morning and AC in the afternoon. Um, you have to balance the pressures. There's an air pressure system. If there's too much air coming in, it can mess up with the outflow. If there's too little coming in, it can mess up. So you
Mhm.
have to balance those pressures. We use the term pipeline, right? That's a very similar concept when we talk about work. I like the idea of the pressures being, because you want those pressures to equalize. You don't want an influx of work to the degree that you can't physically get it all done and you're overwhelmed at that time. There is an out there in the sense that in the solopreneur sense, we can scale. We can scale to meet up and match the pressure, right? We can do
Hmm.
that. And we should learn how to do that. And I'm trying to teach people how to do that because we don't, this brings me back to something I talk about all the time, which is one of the most common problems that every business faces. And it's exacerbated the smaller you are. And that's the feast and famine cycle. Okay. When you have the feast moments where all of that work is flowing in, the natural tendency for everybody is to shut down on any future work or any other people. I don't want any people. I want them to leave me alone. It freaks me
Yeah.
out if they're asking for more. I can't handle more. And you feast and feast and feast and feast and feast. And then you wake up and you've spent 90 days getting all this work done. And you burned through, by the way, 3 months of capital to get there too. So like your,
Hmm.
baseline expenses of 10, 20, $30,000 just also got eaten alive. And then you wake up and you go, okay, well, I think I profited about $15,000 there. That's good, knowing that that's really only 30 days of runway. And then you look around for your work and there's nobody. They're not there
Yeah.
because you just spent 90 days head down. You didn't talk to anyone, right? That's the typical feast and famine cycle. They go right back now to sell, sell, sell hard, and then they fill the pipeline up again, and then they shut it off again because they want to get all the work done. And it's just this roller coaster nightmare existence. And every business owner right now is shaking their head like I've experienced that. It has nothing to do with the size of your team. And I want to help people figure out how to equalize that. That's one of the beautiful things about my model. Our model, this model is that we can expand to fill those gaps, to take the top of that roller coaster off a bit, trim that thing down a little bit in a
Hmm.
way that a traditional company, they can't scale like that. They can't just bring on a ton more employees because they signed that new contract. And everybody here listening who's been laid off before because that contract got cut and now they got cut knows exactly what happens. Like that sucks. And it's very
Sure.
difficult. And so in our sense, it's like, no, you're on for that project for as long as it goes. You're outsourced help. Like you're on your own gig. You should be doing other projects too. If this goes away, you've got your other projects. Like if everybody's working that way, we can expand and contract as necessary. And that just levels that feast and famine off immediately. The thing about there's this key idea. And again, my IQ has dropped 20 points with this whatever cold that I have. So I'm trying to tie this back to something, but you got me fixated on the feast and famine cycle, which is a really big deal to me. But there was another point in there I want to make, but I'm just going to turn it back to you in the sense that you're explaining how to do that well, that while you're working, you're still doing the things that you need to keep that going. And that you're also, I go, okay, I think I remember the other point. Here's the other idea that you speak to when you say, hey, am I going to shoot my film? Am I going to, do some writing? Am I going to cultivate new leads?
Yeah.
You're in that balance kind of financially and spiritually. And like you are in that balance. You're not suffering from feast and famine. So you're able to kind of look at the slight downturn and go, hey, I know the work is coming, but
Hmm.
I want to take this kind of, interim period to do these other things. I think it's really critical for people, especially as we move forward into the new markets that we just talked about and how the rules are changing. You have to stop and think about the life you actually want to live. And at the risk of sounding like the lifestyle business gurus or whatever, which I don't really follow, so I can only imagine how bad it gets. But still, at the end of the day, you do have to consider what kind of lifestyle you want.
Yeah.
Everybody is going to be different. The empire building driven person who wants to build the $1 billion empire does not have the same conceptualization of what good life looks like as someone like you and me who has kids and wants to maximize our time and our flexibility and wants to travel. You know what I mean? These are completely different lifestyle desires. So the advice that works for the empire builder would be just disgusting to us, and vice versa. Doesn't work. And so I
Right.
challenge people to stop and go, what do you want your lifestyle to look like? Do you want to be told what to do every day? Do you want to be forced to work with other people who you call coworkers? Do you want to be told by someone else what you're worth and you can't, earn any more than that? Do you want that 9 to 5 lifestyle? If you do, you know what you're trading it off for. Maybe it is because, well, my weekends are all free. I go
Hmm.
home at 5 o'clock and I shut off. Those are fine. That totally makes sense. And you understand you're risking that you might lose that job. That dude might have 2 years in capital too. So he doesn't care. She doesn't care. If I get laid
Totally.
off, I'll go find another job. Everybody's circumstance is different. We just have to consider what that lifestyle looks like so that we can at least 6 months, 12 months, 3 years, 15 years, whatever into it go, hey, is my life, does it look like what I want it to look like? because there's no sense in, as they say, building the ladder and putting it up against the wrong wall only to find out when you look over, I just spent 25 years climbing the wrong wall.
Yeah.
That happens all the time.
I was at a local event yesterday, which is something I don't get a chance to do a lot of anymore. Most of the time I'm traveling somewhere. But Craig Galati, who you got to meet at the Amplify conference in Austin, Texas, a few months back, was awarded with the basically a lifetime achievement marketing award for SMPS. And he's a cancer survivor and about to retire from his business and just stepped down as president and CEO. They're going through a ownership and leadership transition. But he was talking about one of the things in particular that's related to what you're talking about was he talked about this idea of creating a personal vision statement. And I don't know that you have to be quite so formal about it, but getting a handle on what it is that you want your future to look like. Vision is a question of like what's in the future, where, how does it, how do I get there? And aligning that with your role. So if you're in a company whose vision statement, so to speak, looks like hustle and grind, and yours looks like lifestyle and family time, for instance, it's easy to see the conflict in that. And building your own business, whether it is empire or solopreneur or somewhere in between, understanding like what the business structure looks like and the pace of that growth, and then what your personal vision looks like, I think was a really insightful thing that he shared yesterday. So just his first two steps were like, hey, write down the 5 things that you enjoy doing most, and then write down the 3 things that you feel like every day has to have in it or you don't feel fulfilled. And there were a whole bunch of other steps too, but I thought that was a really interesting way to start out, like what you want that personal vision to look like.
I love that, dude. He's a cool guy. He's well deserved for the Lifetime Achievement Award.
Yeah.
Smart man.
Very wise
Um,
guy.
I really like that actually. I tend to think that minus the occasional catastrophe, the meteor strike or,
Right.
completely unwarranted cancer or something
Yeah.
terrible, outside of those, we get what we want. We're not getting what we say we want, but we're getting exactly what we actually do want at the core. And that can be really discouraging for people who might find themselves in a position that they think, I don't want to be like this. I want to change. I want something different. But it
Right.
should be empowering because it means, well, there's one person who can control that, who can actually fix that. And that's you. You have the ability to do that. It's very difficult to do it if you don't know what it is you want. And sometimes that means knowing what you don't want as a starting point. That might be the easiest way to find out, is what
Hmm.
I don't enjoy. What kind of job don't I like? What kind of
Right.
coworkers don't I want to be with? What clients suck? Like start there if you have to. But you have to actually figure out what it is you want and have the perspective to zoom out a little bit from your own life and go, When I'm on my deathbed, like, what am I thinking about? There's that saying that, um, what is it? When you die, the only people who will remember you worked overtime were your kids,
Oh,
something
right.
like that, or
Uh-huh.
even before you die or whatever. The only people
Right.
who remember you worked overtime are your kids, something like that. That's legit. And that's not just for people with 9 to 5s. That's probably even more so for solopreneur type, unstructured, people like us. Um, and that's a really important thing for us to remember. I love his framework of write those things down and think about them. I can't think of any reason why that would be a negative practice for somebody to at least challenge themselves to think about that. And like every other strategy, you're not trying to like hit a bullseye with one
Right.
dart. That is never the point. You're trying to carve out the arena you kind of want to be in. And
Hmm.
that informs your next actions. And then what that means is that those next actions, the feedback you get from them means something. That's
Hmm.
something that's so misunderstood about the people who say you just act, stop thinking and act.
Right.
If you do that, you don't have context for what you're learning, that you won't learn. You have to at least set an intent first. Then when you act, you can compare that against your intent. That's what we call data. That's how
Right.
thinking works,
Well,
right?
it's about making a choice, right? It's like, the Rolling Stones said you can't always get what you want, but you might get what you need. I think it's more like you get what you choose. Like you
Yeah.
choose the thing over and over and over. And whether you say that's what you wanted or not, that's still what you chose. So I think making those lists and revisiting it in a new season or a new year or a new every 6 months or 5 years, whatever it is, but you're revisiting what is that choice and then recalibrating your path based on that.
That's right. Yeah. If you don't do that, external factors will do that for you.
Sure.
And that is the lifestyle that most people unfortunately live right now, is they have become awash in the current that is flowing down them downstream. You know of the book title and concept I have talked about a million times, which I won't say publicly yet because I'm actually making traction there, that talks exactly about this, that the pace of life and technology and society will engulf you and carry you along with it. And that is by design. It's not a byproduct of anything else. They want you in that mind state. So it
Yep.
is not immediately obvious that you're not going to end up there if you don't fight against that and do something different deliberately for your life.
Yeah. If you don't choose, somebody else will choose for you. So it's you're, what's the word? Abdicating? Is that
Yep.
the,
One of my
yes.
favorite words.
So you are, you're giving over the choice to somebody else or to something else. You're saying,
Yep.
I can't be trusted to make this choice, or I'm too overwhelmed, or whatever else. And so, whatever is happening to you, that's effectively your choice.
It's overwhelmed. You just hit it on the head. If
Right.
if you really dissect it, 90% of the time it is overwhelm. You cannot think. There's a battle analogy that they actually teach, and I'm not a fan of war analogies for business or whatever, and that's not what this is. It's just reality. You cannot think clearly when you're under fire. You just can't. You have to zoom out and get away from it. You have to get into a spot where you can think clearly for 2 seconds and observe what's
Hmm.
actually going on and not be under that constant duress. I don't know about you, but when I look around, I see non-stop duress and overwhelm. And
Yeah.
that's the thesis of that book actually that I'm writing.
Yeah. Just scroll social media if you don't believe us.
It's all there in full
It is
display.
90% overwhelm. Even the memes, even the jokes are about exhaustion.
Yeah.
It's
It
something.
it's really and it kind of goes back to our feast and famine and all that stuff. It's about being very careful about when you are redlining and where you're redlining. And look, I am offender number one in my life. Okay. Like I'm surprised you aren't laughing at me and calling me out on this, but like it took me a long time to learn that you have to take those breaks. You have to gain that perspective. You have to zoom out before you get to red line. You have to realize that when you're at about 70 or 80%, that that's the moment. It's like eating, right? Like they always say,
Right.
if you just slow down and wait like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, that you would actually eat about half of what you normally would before your brain picks up on those hunger cues or whatever, that they're
Right.
over. It's kind of like that. You just start to go, oh, I need to preempt this before the next thing you know, I want to just go lie down and die because I'm so stuffed from the burrito that I ordered. Again, prime offender. Listen, I've downed
Right.
tons of burritos in one go, but I feel like it's something that, people really have to get better at learning is we can't max out and have everything all the time, so that we can get a little space to have some perspective, some breathing room, and we can actually then stop abdicating all of our circumstances in our life and bringing our own agency back to make those choices, and that's something. There's a common thread to all of this stuff. I know, again, I think we're both kind of in some sort of like bacterial infection rambling mode at a certain extent here today, but it is a common theme for us that having agency and control over your own life and choices is really critical. And you can't just declare independence and say, I'm starting a business to get that, because you'll
Hmm.
become a slave to your business real fast. I don't care what model you start. I, I would, I don't know what percentage. I don't know why my brain always wants to go to percentage, but like most people I know owning businesses of every single sort and scale are slaves to that business. They just
Sure.
simply are. And that includes solopreneurs, that includes empire builders. And that is really, I think, kind of for us, that's the thing that, having experienced and worked with every single type of company on the planet, including running our own, varying scales and models, there's a really good reason why we've kind of landed on the model that we have. And it
Right.
maximizes our choices. And now
About
see,
to
there you
die.
go. See, we both feel like crap. I'm sorry, everybody.
Well,
This is the reality. Maybe this is a
speaking
great
of
place to,
creating some space and redlining, maybe we will
yeah,
land the plane here on this episode because both of us need to get ready for a trip. So
it's true.
both heading westward. Uh,
The best direction of all, by the way.
that's right.
I am
Go west,
happier with
young man.
every step when my family and I are heading west, it is happier with every mile.
Excellent. Well, happy trails, and I'm sure we will double back here in a couple weeks and chat again.
Likewise, brother.
Good to
Talk
see you.
soon. You too.
Bye.